back your conversation, and you can tweet us directly at Citizen TV Kenya or at Ann Kiguta, and with an E. I'll introduce my guests to you and the topic. To our far right is Edward Kisiangani, our resident political analyst. Next to him is Peter Wanyama, legal counsel who's been negotiating with doctors on behalf of county governments. And to my left is Dr. Lukoya Atwoli, who's the Honorary Secretary of the Kenya Medical Association, and not Medical Board, I beg your pardon, right. The Kenya Medical Association. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. It seems bizarre that having come so far in the talks that they should be scuttled, I think, in a period of 6 hours or so, over the fact that apparently it's a debate over what should be signed. Should we sign the deals first and then return to work, or vice versa? Is there something else the press is missing out on what happened in this very curious 6 hours?
I personally don't think so. In my view, what ought to be done in terms of the process is the government has put an offer, a final offer on the table. It's up to the doctors then to accept that offer, call off the strike, and engage the government on a return to work formula. It's important for doctors to realize that their strike is absolutely illegal, and therefore you cannot create obstacles in the negotiation process, as it were, in terms of those demands which they're making. So in my view, the doctors need to be a bit reasonable. Okay. They need to understand that there's a process, a path upon which industrial relations take, and at the tail end of the process, when you are at this stage, what they need to do is to now sit down and agree on the specific terms which are supposed to go into the return to work formula. Yeah. So in my view, and that's supposed to be based on the offer which the government has put. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's clear to me that I don't know what else is happening, but at the end of the day, the demand that the doctors should accept the offer that the government has given, the information we have is that they accepted this a long time ago, because the government is offering money. The money offer was accepted. What has been keeping things going is the context in which this offer is going to be accepted. And this has been the CBA, because it was just the appendix to the CBA which has the money. The rest of the CBA has been negotiated and concluded, and the doctors have accepted the government offer as far as money is concerned. So as far as the doctors are concerned, there's no more controversy about the money. Secondly, the recognition agreements that were pending, I think Wakili will agree that these were concluded as well, and it's just a matter of signing. And
so what went wrong in 6 hours?
The only thing that is pending, from the information we have from everybody involved in the process, was the return to work formula, which was not concluded.
And what in particular in the return to work formula is not agreed upon? I
think it is premature to discuss the specific issues, because it hasn't been discussed yet. But there's a draft. There's a draft available, but it hasn't been discussed, so it would be pointless for us to start discussing.
Or the contrary argument, it's pointless not to discuss it, because as far as government is concerned, there's no more talk.
So I think that's a defeatist attitude, because we are going to have a solution to this crisis. This crisis is going to come to
You believe there's still an opportunity to talk with government?
It's a fact that eventually doctors will go back to work, and that hospitals will have doctors in them. What we are discussing right now is a method by which an orderly return to work will be done.
Right.
And I believe that will be concluded.
And you believe it will be done by going back to a negotiating table?
I think there's not much left to negotiate, really, because agreement has been reached on most of the contentious issues. What is remaining is a return to work agreement. And that, there's a draft already available, and it's just a matter of the parties looking at it and agreeing on what method are we going to use to end this strike.
Well, on Tuesday, a very visibly angry president accused doctors of blackmail and threatened to take some serious action on them. Listen, and then we'll talk.
An intern today is being offered more money than a medical practitioner working at Nairobi Hospital, Aga Khan Hospital, Mata Hospital. Kwani hii watu wanaona sisi ni wajinga namna gani? It cannot be. And only for working 2 hours a day in a government hospital, and then they run to do private practice in their clinics.
What do you think about that, Prof? Did doctors squander their goodwill by having the strike persist this long, or did the president lose it?
The president lost it. Because if you look at what he said, actually, if it is true, doctors work for 2 hours, it is up to his administration to make sure that does not happen. Yep. So why has he been presiding over a country where doctors work for 2 hours and still he pays them?
Or rather, it should be the responsibility of county governments, don't you think,
yes.
since it's a devolved function?
But then, as a head of state, as the chief executive, he must be concerned this has happened, and the culprit should have. He must find a solution for that. So that is an administrative thing. But what I would like to say, Anne, is that we have lost the actual plot in this doctor strike. How have we lost it? There are three fundamental things that require urgent attention and conversation by the whole nation. The first thing is the legal aspect, the legal stroke constitution aspect. The second thing is the governance aspect, and the third thing is the issue of power. So quickly let me run through that because we don't have time. The first thing is the legal aspect. Under Article 19, Chapter 4 of the Constitution, Article 19 is very clear that the rights people enjoy are not given by the state. Yeah. Now, when you move to Article 41, one of the rights envisaged in the Bill of Rights is people have a right to go on strike, to picket, demonstrate, and have a right to fair remuneration. The question you ask immediately after that, does the president have a right to withdraw that right from the workers? No. Now, so you move from 19 to 41. But even after you have done that, there are people like my brother Wanyama who will talk about illegalities. Under Article 2 of the Constitution, there is no other law you can obey apart from the Constitution. And if you have a problem with a legislation from Parliament which conflicts with the Constitution, we go with what is in the Constitution.
So you're saying there's no such thing as illegal strike?
Let me just finish because I have my case and you will respond.
It's true.
So under Article 2, the President cannot ask us to obey. There are so many laws which were passed by Parliament which do not interpret the Constitution correctly, including the law on SRC, which under Article 230A says it can fix the salaries of civil servants, public servants, but it only advises government on what to pay for other servants. Yet this SRC sticks its neck on a table of negotiation. That is an illegality. So you don't expect me as a citizen to say that. Now, because I raised three fundamental things.
The third.
The second one. The second one, because there are three. The second one is about governance. In terms of governance, this matter of the doctors started cooking in 2013, quickly. Now, we have been told that some government official, a pseudo-government official called Bor, signed something which was not accepted. What punishment was taken by government to a person who masqueraded as representing government and then signed a deal that has put government in trouble? If that has not been taken, that is a case of irresponsibility in terms of governance. So you cannot come and tell us these people are misbehaving. So on governance matters, purely on that no action has been taken against Bor up to now, 4 years later, then you start reminding people it is irresponsibility on the type of the question of government. The third and the last thing that we really need to interrogate is the question of power. You know, Anne, I invite our president and anybody, even the Council of Governors, if they have not read these two books, Sun Tzu's Art of War and the 48 laws of what?
Power. Oh dear.
These two things are critical because they would help the president. The first thing that he talks about is that when you practice power and you have surrounded an army which is losing a battle, you must leave a channel for them to escape. If you continue punishing them and they have no escape, they can hurt you badly.
Hasn't the let me put that. Yes. Hasn't the escape been left to the extent that the COG is still saying if you return to work today, what we agreed on is still on the table?
The condition is to have the doctors get humiliated so that they live without dignity. So what he needed to do is to leave an escape route and say, yes, we have signed because we have agreed, you also sign. Because the first person to sign should be the person giving money. And after he has signed, then you take it. So I'm just concluding. I'm concluding because my colleagues can respond to that. So the other thing is reputation. Under the Article 19, Law 19 of the 48 Rules of Power, 19 says this, that reputation is very important in political power. Now, in the current confrontation with the doctors and the government, who has reputation in the public eye, if in fact you don't have if you have good reputation, you win. If you don't have reputation, you lose. And he says, don't direct your anger to the wrong people. The president and the council of governors, you have seen even from both sides of the political divide, both governors from NAS or whichever way you call it, Jubilee, they have agreed to say one statement that to hit at the doctors. The reason is there is corruption in the counties, and so when you direct your anger to the wrong people, you also lose it.
But Peter, your turn to respond.
Yeah, Professor makes, in my view, very fundamental mistakes. One is that the High Court of Kenya, which has constitutional powers to interpret the Constitution, declared that strike illegal.
That's not true.
And the basis upon which they declared that strike illegal is because the right to strike, the right to picket, is not a right which is absolute.
Okay, the court
it can actually be qualified by legislation. So the point is that the High Court of Kenya, in interpreting the Constitution, for those policy reasons, declared the strike by doctors illegal. And that is why they were called. That is why they were called to call off that strike, sit on the negotiating table.
Order people to call off a strike.
The court cannot interfere with the Bill of Rights.
Can I just point out one thing?
Because either way the court may have
but let me just point out.
You have a jaundiced reading of the law.
Let me
the court cannot.
Let me just point this out. The Constitution gives every worker the right to strike. The law, the Employment and the Labor Relations Act, gives the procedures about how to go about this right. Therefore, in giving procedures about how to go this right, you cannot abrogate the same right.
Professor, what
so the right to strike is there. What the court can do. Let me advise you. Let me advise you.
I think
let me advise you. Based on the law, the Employment and Labor Relations Court has the authority to declare a strike whether protected or unprotected, and that's it. And after it declares it unprotected, then the employees are at the mercy of the employer. If it declares it protected, then they can seek recourse in court in case the employer does anything untoward. But they cannot declare it, one, illegal, and two, order people to go back to work, because that is legitimizing slavery. So you cannot have a court forcing people to go to work.
No, Professor, there are procedures. There are procedures for calling.
Professor, let him respond.
Let me explain something. There are procedures in legislation by Parliament for you to call industrial action. More importantly, it's key to note that doctors fall in a very, very special category. Just like in the armed forces, they are special when it comes to work, and they are not special when it comes to pay.
Let him respond.
The right to go on strike is not absolute, and in terms of procedures, you must follow what the legal framework has stated. So in my view, what the legislation that says the moment the doctors
Doctor, I think we allowed you to speak.
The moment where the doctors made the mistake is to proceed on a strike while disregarding lawful orders which were issued by the judge, and that is where the mistake in my view was really established.
But Peter, you said that you have various fundamental flaws in Professor's argument. Let's move from the legality or illegality of the strike to what else you think was fundamentally flawed in his argument.
Yes, you know, in terms of the mechanics, industrial relations are governed by traditions, and in terms of moving the discussions forward, there are certain guidelines which we follow, including international conventions. What is important to emphasize is that if doctors want to go on strike, there are procedures to follow.
Absolutely.
And at Article 41 of the Constitution, which you have cited, is not absolute. Doctors, under no circumstances, are they supposed to go on strike. So,
according to which law?
What I'm saying is that doctors are not supposed to go on strike.
According to?
He has a fair point. According to which law that doctors are not allowed to go on strike?
Fight it. Yeah, the point is that doctors perform a very, very sensitive work.
According to which law?
Just like security forces.
But you cannot.
So the point is that for you to go on strike, you must follow the established
law.
Procedures and traditions.
Our brother is a lawyer, isn't it? Here is a lawyer in the middle of the night in Kenya who wants to tell us we must obey parliamentary legislation and not obey the Constitution.
But he's not citing the law.
It doesn't exist. Yes,
that law doesn't exist.
Because you know what? There are so many laws. Even you as a lawyer, if you are honest to yourself, there are so many laws which have been passed by this parliament which are illegal. So when there is a dispute,
so you want to justify
unconstitutional.
Because they said that they are unconstitutional. So what we need to do as a citizen, and I can tell you, my brother, as a citizen, under Article 3, when I realize that a certain law is illegal, I don't obey it. Because by obeying it, I'm violating the Constitution.
Let me hold that thought there and bring in the chair. Let me bring in the chair. Let's hold it. Let's bring in the chair of the Council of Governors. Earlier I spoke to him about the collapse of these talks, and he told me that there is absolutely no chance that they will be returning to the negotiating table.
And the decision that was made when the two levels of government met was that there are no more talks to be engaged between the government and the doctors. The offer has not been withdrawn. The offer still stands. In fact, that's why we send those who are working, doctors who are working, will start benefiting from that offer. So the offer has not been withdrawn. Those who go back to work will benefit from that offer. The only thing we will not do is to continue engaging in fruitless talks that have taken us for 3 months without bearing any fruits. The suffering of the Kenyan people, especially the poor and the ordinary people who cannot access health care, has been continuing. And when a country is confronted with this kind of unprecedented situation, government must make decisions.
As we understand it, Governor,
enjoying the luxury of negotiating for 3 months when people are suffering.
All right, as we understand it, that every other issue had been concluded, save for a return to work agreement where there were perhaps 2 or 3 clauses of contention. Is that in fact the case? If
that is the case, then why don't they just return to work? And then we are able to take it from there. Because they say everything has been concluded, yet they don't want to go back to work. If all the issues have been agreed and the offer we gave, they are happy with it, then as a sign of good faith, they go back to work, and then we start negotiating the CBA.
What would it take to get foreign doctors to be licensed to practice locally?
We are exploring that possibility. The minister in charge of the cabinet secretary in charge of health was authorized to look into the law and see how fast we can fast track the amendment if we require any. And the speakers of both houses also committed to fast track any legislation that may be required to enable us empower the government to register doctors from outside the country. And that should not take us more than 2 weeks.
Okay. How will you vet them to ensure that they are fit to practice here?
Well, the government has the requisite technical capacity to vet doctors from abroad. You look at their credentials, you look at their training, which schools they went to, and we have, in the employment of government, senior technical people in that health sector who can be able to give us the confidence we require to know that those doctors are properly qualified to come and work in Kenya. And we are not doing something that has not been done elsewhere. We have many Cuban doctors working in Tanzania. We have many Cuban doctors working in Angola. In fact, we have many expatriate doctors working in Africa. Remember, we even had, during the other strike, during the President Moi's regime, we also got doctors to work from India here in Kenya. So it's not something new and that has not been done. It is something that can be done, and the precedents are there.
So that was the chair of the Council of Governors speaking to me earlier. Let me come to you, Dr. Tweli, with the 2 fundamental issues that he has raised. The first being that there's absolutely no more going back to a negotiating table that yields no talks. So I would like to know from you how you believe you can return and sign a deal. But on the other hand, he's also raised the issue of foreign doctors and saying that requisite legislation to have that happen will not take more than 2 weeks to pass. So let's discuss those dual issues. First, how will you get back to work with your deal in hand if the government is saying we're not sitting with you anymore?
Well, I wouldn't deign to argue with the governor of the Republic of Kenya, and I wouldn't deign to argue with the President of the Republic of Kenya. But I hear the message, and the message is that the deal is still on the table. And there's only one way to accept a deal, is to sign it. And therefore, I hear the governor saying that there's still room for people to get together and sign an agreement to get back to work. And that's exactly the same thing I'm saying. And therefore, we're in agreement and we're on the same page. He has not said...
So do you think it's just a threat, an empty threat?
It is not a threat. It's a statement of fact that there's an agreement, and he would like that the doctors' union get together and sign the agreement. And that's exactly the same thing I'm saying.
Religious leaders have backed out. They're saying they're not part of this deal anymore.
So at the end of the day, this is an industrial dispute. It is not a political dispute. It is not a contest of might. It is an industrial dispute. There's only one way industrial disputes are solved, and it is signing a return to work agreement. So all that is left, and I agree with the governor, all that is left is to get down together, sign a return to work agreement, and end the strike. So that will be done.
Okay,
that will be done.
You're confident that...
I think the mistake which the doctors are making is not to understand how the process is supposed to be structured. First of all, I'm happy that the doctors have said they have accepted the government's offer. If indeed that is the case, my recommendation to them is then do it formally, because the government has engaged the doctors in the 3 meetings. Remember, every time you go into meetings, doctors go around in circles, explaining the frustration by the chairperson of the Council of Governors. That at least you must bring that to an end. If they have accepted the offer, I think in terms of going forward, then the 2 parties can sit down, negotiate on a return to work formula, and perhaps agree on
the government is going to have to backtrack on its stance that there's no more talking.
No. The talking is with a view to implement that offer which the government has put on the table.
So if we're meeting to sign, is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
To agree on the modalities.
On the mechanics. But the issues which took doctors on strike, the issues in the CBA, all these issues have been agreed upon. So in my view, and moving the issue forward, let doctors then not backtrack on this issue. The position is that they have accepted the government's offer, so come to the negotiating table, let's agree on a return to work formula, look at the details, then agree on the issues which can go into an amended CBA. I think, so in my view, that's a path which can be pursued,
we are on the same page,
and it's a path which is legal,
and
it's a path which can end the strike.
Opinion court has had something small to do with
exactly on the same page.
On that. Okay, hold that thought before we lose it. But he's also talked about foreign doctors coming to the country, and that the requisite part of law of legislation would only take 2 weeks to make the relevant amendments. Could you break that down for us?
That's a message to the doctors.
What would need to happen? Let him respond from the legal perspective. What will need to happen?
Of course, I don't want to speculate on what Parliament will do. However, in terms of the process, you know, it's a statement of frustration by government. These doctors, the government has done everything within its powers to ensure they are properly remunerated. However, they keep on shifting goalposts. Now, what is Plan B? Plan B is that you have to look for alternatives. You have to put measures, policy, legislative, and other interventions. I can't comment on the specific technical details which will go into legislation. Those are technical issues which will go into legislation, and for Parliament to decide. What is important for the doctors to know is that if you can't come to work, then the government, which has an obligation to ensure that Kenyans access medical services, will have to take other
What would need to happen for a foreign doctor to practice?
So there is already legislation, both local and international, to which Kenya is a party to, about how movement of labor, especially in the health sector, is governed, right from WHO all the way to the Commonwealth. You cannot go to India and ask the Indian government to send doctors to Kenya. There is a framework in which this is done. And the fundamental issue in that framework, especially in the Commonwealth, is that the Commonwealth Medical Association has an agreement that you will never ship doctors from the Commonwealth into another Commonwealth country when there is an industrial action ongoing.
So they need to look outside the Commonwealth.
They have to sort out the industrial action, and then they go to the Commonwealth and say, if you have doctors who would like to...
You're just talking about the Commonwealth, sir. I'm saying that they can go outside the Commonwealth.
I challenge anyone.
So maybe Indian doctors are not coming.
India is in the Commonwealth.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. Maybe Indian doctors are not coming. But what about the Cubans?
The Cubans, I mean, we welcome doctors to be brought to Kenya, because we have been arguing for ages that we have a shortage of doctors in this country.
So this
the
is
doctors
not
who are
fresh to you?
working. No, it's not, because in fact, even now, even counties need doctors over and above the doctors who are working in those counties. And they have been advertising, but they do not get enough doctors, because there's just no doctors standing at Kencom waiting to be recruited.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we welcome. If there are any doctors out there who are willing to come and work in Kenya,
you're calling their bluff. Bring the Cubans, you're saying. Okay, Prof.
You see, Anne, if we look at the issue, let me just thrash out these issues. The issue of importing doctors. We had some people mentioning Tanzania, that's Cuba. Cuba, the ratio of the doctor to patient in Cuba is 1 to 200. And now, 1 to 200, Cuba does not have private hospitals. It doesn't have clinics. The doctor can say private clinics. Most of the people have their own housing. Now, our ratio of doctor to patient is 1 to 17,000. So you are saying the Cuban doctor will come here earn less than our doctors and take
he mightn't coming as an
or probably more,
probably
more, and take on that load of 1 to 17. or maybe it will reduce to 12,000 and still accept low pay. So that's the first thing. The second thing, you go to Tanzania. Tanzania's ratio of a doctor to patient is 1 to 25,000. It's even worse off than Kenya. Then politicians like Honorable Munya and others are telling us we can import from Tanzania. Even setting our standard of excellence in terms of Tanzania is pathetic.
Message to the doctor. Sorry, Tanzania, if you're watching.
Yes,
wow.
But Anne, the point I'm raising, which should not be lost in this discussion, is the fact that the president and even the council of governors are venting their anger on the wrong people. The real enemy of Kenya is the thieves who have been stealing our public resources. That money is enough to pay doctors. And yet, the anger is now saying the victims are doctors. How much money is being stolen? And I wanted to say that the reason why the Council of Governors have now turned, you remember they even refused some facilities which are coming from government and to the county. The reason why they are rejected, they are now supporting the government is because the stealing of public funds in the counties is first class. So if you start, if you want to now to...
Unlike in Tanzania, right?
Yes, and if you want now to deal with that, yes, the Auditor General's report is there.
We have to, unfortunately, gentlemen, we have to wind up this conversation. So I'll come to you with a final round of comments. I'm sure you want to respond to Prof.
In my view, one of the reasons why doctors have gone on strike is really to frustrate the evolution of health services. However, they have realized that it can't work.
I think that's not
in terms of the health sector. It's one of the reasons actually why they went on strike. So what we are emphasizing and want to tell Kenyans is that the government is committed to pay doctors well. However, they can't be paid. They can't be paid beyond the limits because the other public sector. Remember, the other public sector. So you can't.
Let him make his final comment.
You can't pay doctors.
Let him make his final
you
comment.
can't pay doctors beyond the economic.
But it's unfortunate to lie to
fiscal limits. And therefore, it is. Myself, I'm happy that doctors through Atoli here have said that they have accepted the government's offer. So, in my view, they should now soften their stand, and we agree on how to sign the return to work formula, which can be done actually in a day because all the issues have been agreed upon.
All right, let him come to Dr. Tony.
I think it's unfortunate to come to national TV and lie to Kenyans that doctors went on strike to frustrate devolution. The issues have always been clear. Before 2016, in 2011, there was a doctor strike. After that doctor strike, there was a return to work formula in which it was agreed that a CBA will be signed. The CBA was negotiated and signed. It was not registered in the industrial court by the government who was supposed to do so. The doctors went to court in 2015 to get that CBA registered. The court on October 6, 2016, you're an office of the court. On October 6, 2016, the court ordered the government and the union to sit down and look at the 3 or 4 contentious issues in the CBA and register it in court. This was an order of the court. The doctors went on strike pursuant to getting that order of the court implemented. It's a matter of principle. It's a matter that we cannot, on the one hand, say we will respect the courts, and on the other hand, we disrespect the same courts, and then we come here and say it is the doctors who want to frustrate devolution. The CBA does not have any item that says frustrate devolution. KMA is on record as having said they support devolution. They just have issues about management of human resources for health. And they want us to have a structured method of managing our national human resources for health. So they do not have any issues with devolution. Governors buying medicines, governors building dispensaries and
that is not where you went.
We have no issues.
You've made your point, sir.
Yeah. So I think it is unfortunate if we come to national TV and lie to Kenyans that the doctors are on strike because they don't want devolution. We must agree devolution is a fact. However, we have issues about the working conditions of doctors. And the working conditions of doctors are the places where patients go. So if we improve the working conditions of doctors where they work, the patients will have a better experience when they go to hospital. So this is the issue. It is not about money because the money was agreed on. What has been a disagreement has been the CBA signing. And I think Wakili knows. Wakili is sneering here, but you have both agreed that you've agreed on all the fundamentals. We have agreed on everything in the CBA, and he agreed. It is ready for signing. Okay, your final comment then.
I want to ask my friend Onyama 2 questions. In your understanding, maybe you don't need to answer this. Have you ever told the government that it has been irresponsible in the way it handles, even the Council of Governors, the way it handles workers? This doctor strike, in fact, is replicated with the lecturers. They had a time, 2013, to have their CBA sorted out. 4 years later, the government looks like it is being woken up to a problem which should have been solved in 2013.
Industrial relations are poor.
So have you ever told them that the industrial relations are poor? Secondly,
that will stabilize.
Secondly, how much do they pay you for representing the Council of Governors? You deserve the money you are paid. You think you can be paid better than the doctors?
Absolutely.
You don't deserve it. You don't deserve it. You are one of the fellows who are...
I want to talk about the 2 hours.
Let him finish.
About the 2 hours.
Yes.
Let me make a comment.
That is one of the fellows who is picking money from the Council of Governors.
That was meant to pay doctors. Come now, Professor.
Kenyans cannot fill you.
Counties which employ doctors.
Yes, they have employed you to pick money when doctors are not even to that's why you are...
Okay,
let me tell you something about the 2 hours.
Prof, enough. Let me
say something about
we
the
must
2
stand
hours.
up. We must stand
One of the things I have been told, I didn't listen to the president saying anything about doctors working for 2 hours, but I have been told that it was said that doctors work for only 2 hours.
And then go off to their private
clinic.
Yes.
I think it is unfortunate if that is the understanding, because only less than 20% of doctors are eligible to have private clinics. Most of the doctors are junior doctors, they're medical officers, they're interns, and so on. They do not have private practice. It is only the very senior doctors, the consultants, who open private practice. And they see patients in those private practices on their own time. Now, if you have employed me to see patients in the hospital, and I see them for only 2 hours and I disappear, and you allow this to continue year in, year out, can you tell me where the problem is?
That is my point. I think the message was that doctors need to really commit to public service.
The commitment is clear. Doctors, let me tell you, I have built a mental hospital within MTRM.
And we are happy that there is some improvement.
So you're committed.
We are committed.
Gentlemen, I must wind up there. And interestingly, Prof, thank you. Thank you for your contribution. And thank you for your contribution. Nonetheless, I wind you up there on an interesting note where at least the Council of Governors and doctors have agreed that we can actually sit down and sign. If, gentlemen, you would have individual leadership in this matter and then go ahead and do this tomorrow, then I think you'd have done the nation a great service. We're taking a break. We're back with business after this. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.